The morning sun cast long shadows across the Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters as Lieutenant Sarah stepped out of her government sedan. At 28, she carried herself with the quiet confidence that came from years of proving herself in a world that constantly questioned her presence. Her crisp Navy uniform bore the gold warfare pins that marked her as a qualified surface warfare officer. But today, she wore something far more significant: orders that would change everything. The security checkpoint buzzed with the usual morning activity. Sailors and officers moved through with practiced efficiency, their conversations a mix of operational planning and casual banter. Sarah approached the desk, where a young petty officer sat reviewing identification cards. "Morning, ma'am," the petty officer said, glancing up briefly before returning to his paperwork. "Purpose of visit?" "Reporting for temporary assignment," Sarah replied, handing over her military ID and a sealed envelope containing her orders. The petty officer's eyebrows raised slightly as he read the destination on the envelope. "SEAL Team 7, you sure this is right, ma'am?" "Positive." He shrugged and made the necessary entries in his logbook, then handed her a visitor's badge. "Building 164, second floor, elevators down the hall to your right." Sarah clipped the badge to her uniform and made her way through the corridors. The walls were lined with photographs of SEAL teams from decades past, their faces serious and determined. She had studied these images during her preparation, knowing that soon she would be walking among the modern inheritors of this legacy. The elevator climbed slowly to the second floor, and Sarah used the time to center herself. She had been through challenging assignments before. Her deployment aboard the USS Monterey had tested her in ways that most people would never understand. But this assignment was different. This time, she was not just representing herself, but proving that the Navy's experimental integration program could work. The doors opened to reveal a long corridor with offices on both sides. The familiar sounds of military life echoed from various rooms, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, and the occasional burst of laughter. Sarah found the door marked SEAL Team 7 Operations and knocked twice. "Enter," came a gruff voice from inside. The office was larger than she had expected, with maps covering most of the wall space and a conference table that could seat 12 people. Behind a metal desk sat a man in his early 40s with graying temples and the weathered look of someone who had spent years in harsh environments. His name tape read, CDR Martinez. "Lieutenant reporting for duty, sir," Sarah said, snapping to attention and offering a crisp salute. Commander Martinez returned the salute and gestured to a chair across from his desk. "At ease, Lieutenant. Please have a seat." Sarah settled into the chair, maintaining her professional bearing while studying the commander's face for any hint of his thoughts. Martinez opened a manila folder and spent several moments reading through what she assumed were her service records. "Interesting background," he said, finally looking up. "Surface warfare officer, top of your class at the Naval War College, deployment record that would make most officers jealous. The question is, what exactly are you doing here?" "Sir, I've been assigned as a liaison officer for the Joint Operations Planning Cell. My role is to coordinate between SEAL Team 7 and surface fleet assets for upcoming training exercises." Martinez nodded slowly. "And you understand that this is somewhat unprecedented?" "Yes, sir. I'm aware that this is part of a pilot program." "The men have been briefed on your arrival, but I want to be clear about something." Martinez leaned forward, his expression serious. "The SEALs are a tight-knit community. They've earned their place here through some of the most demanding training in the military. Some of them might need time to adjust to having a surface warfare officer in their operational planning." Sarah had expected this conversation. "I understand, sir. I'm not here to prove anything to anyone except that I can do the job I've been assigned." "Good answer." Martinez stood up and moved to the window overlooking the training compound. "Your first briefing is at 1400 hours in Conference Room B. The team leaders will be there, along with the senior enlisted. I suggest you spend some time before then familiarizing yourself with our current operational tempo and training schedule." "Aye, aye, sir." "One more thing, Lieutenant." Martinez turned back to face her. "The men you'll be working with have been through things that most people can't imagine. They've earned their respect through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Respect is something that's earned here, not given." Sarah stood and straightened her uniform. "I wouldn't expect it any other way, sir." After being dismissed, Sarah spent the next hour reviewing files and familiarizing herself with the base layout. The morning passed quickly as she prepared for what she knew would be her real introduction to SEAL Team 7. At 13:55 hours, she made her way to conference room B. The door was closed, but she could hear voices from inside, deep, confident tones mixed with occasional laughter. Sarah took a deep breath, knocked once, and entered. The conversation stopped immediately. 8 men in various combinations of uniform and casual clothing turned to look at her. Their ages ranged from mid-20s to early 40s, but they all shared the same intense, evaluating gaze that she had learned to recognize in elite military personnel. Said a voice from the head of the table. A tall man with sergeant's stripes stood up. "This is Lieutenant, our new liaison officer." The introductions that followed were polite but distant. Senior Chief Petty Officer Jackson, the senior enlisted advisor. Lieutenant Commander Brooks, the executive officer. Chief Petty Officer, team leader for Alpha Squad. The names and faces blurred together as Sarah focused on projecting confidence and competence. "So, Lieutenant," said Petty Officer First Class, a stocky man with multiple deployment patches on his uniform, "what exactly does a surface warrior know about special operations?" The question was posed casually, but Sarah recognized the challenge beneath it. "I know that successful operations require coordination between all available assets, Petty Officer. My job is to ensure that surface fleet capabilities are properly integrated into your planning process." "Fair enough," replied, but his tone suggested he remained unconvinced. Lieutenant Commander Brooks opened a laptop and projected a map onto the wall screen. "We're planning a training exercise for next month. Simulated terrorist seizure of a merchant vessel in international waters. The scenario calls for a coordinated response involving both SEAL insertion and surface fleet support." For the next hour, Sarah listened as the team outlined their preliminary plans. She took careful notes, asking occasional questions that demonstrated her understanding of both naval operations and the unique requirements of special operations forces. Gradually, she sensed the atmosphere in the room beginning to shift from skepticism to cautious interest. When the briefing ended, most of the team members filed out quickly but lingered behind. Sarah was gathering her materials when he approached. "No offense, ma'am, but we've had plenty of staff officers come through here thinking they understand what we do. Most of them are gone within a few weeks when they realize this isn't like pushing papers at the Pentagon." Sarah looked up from her notebook. "I'm not here to play pretend, Petty Officer. I'm here to do a job." Studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly. "We'll see, ma'am, we'll see." As Sarah left the conference room, she knew that the real test was just beginning. The formal briefings and polite introductions were over. Now came the hard part, proving that she belonged in a world that had never welcomed outsiders, especially not outsiders who looked like her. The rest of the afternoon was spent in individual meetings with team leaders, reviewing operational procedures and learning the intricate details of how SEAL Team 7 conducted business. Each conversation was a careful dance of professional courtesy mixed with underlying skepticism. By 1700 hours, Sarah felt the mental fatigue that came from being constantly evaluated. She was preparing to leave for the day when Senior Chief Jackson appeared at her temporary office door. "Lieutenant, got a minute?" "Of course, Senior Chief." Jackson entered and closed the door behind him. "I wanted to have a word with you privately. The commander asked me to make sure you're settling in okay." "I appreciate that, Senior Chief. Everyone has been very professional." "Good to hear, but I want you to understand something." Jackson's voice took on a more serious tone. "These men have been through hell together. They trust each other with their lives because they've proven themselves under fire. That kind of trust doesn't come easy, and it doesn't come quick." Sarah nodded. "I understand." "I hope you do, because tomorrow we start field training exercises. The classroom stuff is over. Now we see how you handle yourself when things get physical." After Jackson left, Sarah sat alone in her office as the building grew quiet around her. Through her window, she could see SEAL trainees running on the beach in the distance, their movements synchronized despite the obvious exhaustion written on their faces. She thought about the conversation with Jackson and skeptical comments. They weren't wrong to be cautious. The integration program was experimental, and failure would reflect poorly on everyone involved. But Sarah had not come this far by backing down from challenges. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her sister back in California. "How's the new assignment? Are the Navy SEALs as tough as they look in the movies?" Sarah smiled as she typed back, "Tougher, but so am I." As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, Sarah reflected on the day. The formal introduction was complete, but the real work was just beginning. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to prove herself. Walking through the corridors toward the exit, she passed more photographs of SEAL teams from various eras. Their faces seemed to watch her as she passed, silent witnesses to the legacy she was now a small part of. Sarah straightened her shoulders and walked with purpose toward the door. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples as she stepped outside. In the distance, she could hear the rhythmic sound of boots on sand as another training group completed their evening run. The sound was oddly comforting, a reminder that in this world, performance mattered more than perception. Sarah drove home through the sand traffic, her mind already working through the challenges that tomorrow would bring. She had cleared the first hurdle, but many more lay ahead. The real test would come not in conference rooms or formal briefings, but in the field, where theory met reality and reputations were forged through action. As she pulled into her apartment complex, one thought echoed in her mind. Tomorrow, the proving ground would expand beyond paperwork and presentations. Tomorrow, she would discover whether months of preparation had truly prepared her for what lay ahead in the unforgiving world of naval special warfare. Dawn broke gray and cold over the Pacific as Sarah arrived at the training facility at 500 hours. The field exercise area stretched across several acres of beach and inland terrain, designed to replicate various operational environments. She had spent the previous evening studying the exercise parameters, but seeing the actual training ground brought home the complexity of what lay ahead. Temporary structures had been erected to simulate a merchant vessel's deck layout, complete with shipping containers and realistic obstacles. Mock-ups of engine rooms and crew quarters dotted the landscape, while offshore, an actual decommissioned vessel served as the primary target for the day's operations. "Early bird, I see," came a voice behind her. Sarah turned to find Chief approaching with a cup of coffee in each hand. He offered one to her, which she accepted gratefully. "Couldn't sleep much," Sarah admitted. "First day of field exercises tends to do that." Chuckled, "Smart to get here early. Gives you a chance to see the setup before the chaos starts." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the training staff completed their final preparations. Sarah noticed that seemed more relaxed than he had during yesterday's briefing, as if being in the field environment had shifted something in his demeanor. "Can I ask you something, Chief?" Sarah said. "Shoot. How long have you been with the teams?" 12 years, started as a basic SEAL, worked my way up, deployed 6 times to various garden spots around the world. Took a sip of his coffee. "This is my second tour with Team 7. Ever work with surface fleet liaison officers before?" Was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. "We've had staff officers observe exercises before, but never someone embedded in the planning process like this. Usually, surface fleet coordination happens at a much higher level." "Any advice for someone trying to navigate that difference?" "Yeah," said, turning to look at her directly. "Remember that everything we do here is about keeping people alive. When you're hanging off a rope from a helicopter over hostile water or clearing rooms where bad guys are shooting back, theory doesn't mean much. What matters is whether your teammates trust your judgment when lives are on the line." Before Sarah could respond, the sound of vehicles approaching drew their attention. A convoy of military trucks was pulling into the staging area, followed by several smaller vehicles carrying exercise observers and safety personnel. "Show time," said, "You ready for this?" "As ready as I can be." The next hour was a whirlwind of activity. SEAL Team 7 members arrived in small groups, their gear organized with the efficiency that came from years of practice. Sarah watched as they conducted equipment checks, reviewed communication protocols, and performed the 100 small tasks that preceded any major operation. Lieutenant Commander Brooks called the group together at 6:30 for the final briefing. The assembled SEALs formed a semicircle around a large map table, their attention focused and serious despite the early hour. "Today's exercise scenario," Brooks began. "Merchant vessel MV Pacific Star has been seized by terrorists approximately 12 nautical miles off the coast. The vessel is carrying a mixed cargo manifest, including containers marked as hazardous materials. Intelligence suggests 15 to 20 hostiles, armed with small arms and possibly explosives. He pointed to various locations on the map as he continued. Primary objective is hostage rescue. We have confirmed 23 crew members aboard. Secondary objective is securing the vessel and its cargo. Surface fleet assets will provide outer security perimeter and fire support if requested. Sarah found herself taking detailed notes, not just about the tactical elements, but about how the briefing was conducted. The communication style was direct and efficient, with each team member asking specific questions about their area of responsibility. "Lieutenant," Brooks said, turning toward her, "your role today is to coordinate with the surface vessels and ensure communication between the assault team and fleet assets. You'll be stationed in the command post with direct radio contact to all elements." "Understood, sir." Petty Officer raised his hand. "What's the rules of engagement for surface fleet fire support?" "Weapons tight unless specifically authorized by the assault team leader. We don't want to sink our own objective." Brooks looked around the group. "Any other questions?" The briefing concluded with a detailed timeline review. Sarah was impressed by the level of coordination required: helicopter insertion, underwater approach routes, communication windows, and extraction procedures all had to be synchronized with split-second timing. As the group dispersed to begin final preparations, approached Sarah. "Ma'am, you ever been in a command post during a live fire exercise?" "I've participated in fleet exercises, but nothing quite like this." Nodded thoughtfully. "It gets pretty intense. Lot of radio chatter, multiple things happening at once. Important thing is to stay calm and stick to established communication protocols." Sarah was surprised by the helpful tone. "I appreciate the heads up, Petty Officer. Just want to make sure everyone knows what they're doing out there." The command post was located in a converted shipping container equipped with multiple radio systems, computer monitors, and communication equipment. Sarah spent the next 30 minutes familiarizing herself with the setup while the exercise controllers conducted final systems checks. At 800 hours, the exercise commenced. "Control, this is Bravo Team, departing staging area for helicopter insertion," came the first radio call. Sarah keyed her microphone. "Bravo Team, control copies. Surface Fleet reports all stations ready." Through the command post windows, she could see the helicopters lifting off in the distance, their rotors creating dust clouds as they gained altitude. On the radio net, she listened to the steady stream of position reports and status updates that marked the operation's progress. "Control, this is USS Stockton, establishing outer security perimeter, over." "Stockton, control copies. Maintain station and report any surface contacts." The next 20 minutes were a careful ballet of moving pieces. The assault team approached their target from multiple directions, while surface vessels positioned themselves to provide support if needed. Sarah found herself completely absorbed in the coordination process, tracking the location and status of each element while maintaining communication with the fleet assets. "Control, this is Alpha Team Leader, requesting permission to commence assault." Sarah checked her status board, confirming that all elements were in position. "Alpha Team Leader, Control, all surface assets report ready. You are cleared to commence assault." What followed was 20 minutes of intense radio traffic as the SEAL teams conducted their simulated assault on the target vessel. Sarah listened to the tactical communications while coordinating with the surface ships, ensuring that everyone remained aware of the assault team's location and status. "Control, Alpha Team Leader. We have secured the bridge and are moving to clear the engine spaces." "Control, USS Stockton. Request permission to close distance for better fire support positioning." Sarah quickly consulted with the exercise controller before responding. "Stockton, Control, cleared to close to 500 meters. Maintain bearing 180 from target vessel." As the exercise progressed, Sarah began to understand the complexity of the coordination challenge. Multiple teams were operating in close proximity, while surface vessels maneuvered to provide support without interfering with the operation. Every decision had to be made quickly but carefully, with constant awareness of how each element affected the others. "Control, this is Bravo Team Leader, We have secured all hostages and are preparing for extraction. Bravo team leader, control copies. Surface assets standing by for extraction support. The exercise concluded at 9:30 with all objectives achieved and all personnel safely extracted. As the radio nets went quiet, Sarah felt a sense of satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. The morning had been more challenging than she had anticipated, but also more rewarding. "Not bad for your first time," said the exercise controller, a grizzled master chief who had been observing Sarah's performance. "You kept up with the traffic and made good decisions on the surface coordination." "Thank you, Master Chief. It was definitely a learning experience." "Best kind there is." The post-exercise debrief took place back at the command center, with all participants reviewing what had gone well and what needed improvement. Sarah listened as team members discussed tactical decisions and communication issues with the kind of detailed analysis she associated with professional athletes reviewing game film. "One thing I noticed," said Chief during the communication review, "surface fleet coordination was smoother than usual. Responses were quicker and more precise." Lieutenant Commander Brooks nodded. "I agree. Having someone dedicated to that coordination made a significant difference." He looked towards Sarah. "Good work today, Lieutenant." "Thank you, sir. I learned a lot watching how the teams operate." After the formal debrief, several team members lingered to discuss specific aspects of the exercise. Sarah found herself included in these conversations in a way she hadn't been the previous day. The successful completion of her coordination role seemed to have earned her a measure of acceptance. "Hey, Lieutenant," called out as the group was dispersing. "A few of us usually grab lunch at a place off base after exercises. You interested?" Sarah was surprised by the invitation. "That sounds good, thanks for asking." The restaurant was a small Mexican place popular with military personnel from the various bases in the area. Sarah found herself seated at a large table with 6 members of SEAL Team 7, listening to stories and getting to know the personalities behind the professional facades she had seen during training. "So how'd you end up in the Navy?" asked Petty Officer Jackson, a quiet man who served as the team's communications specialist. "Naval Academy," Sarah replied. "Always wanted to serve, and the Academy offered the best opportunity for a career in the Navy." "You enjoy surface fleet duty?" "I did. There's something satisfying about being responsible for a ship and its crew. But this assignment is teaching me about capabilities I never really understood before." Chief leaned back in his chair. "It works both ways. Most of us have a pretty limited understanding of how surface fleet operations work. Having someone who can bridge that gap is valuable." The conversation continued for over an hour, ranging from serious discussions about military service to lighter topics like sports and movies. Sarah began to see the human side of men she had previously known only as professional operators. As they prepared to leave, approached her privately. "Listen, ma'am, I may have been a little harsh yesterday. It's nothing personal, we just get a lot of people who think they understand what we do without really understanding it." "I appreciate that, petty officer, and I understand the skepticism. I'm here to prove myself, not to expect automatic acceptance." "Fair enough, but today was a good start." Driving back to base for the afternoon administrative session, Sarah reflected on the morning's events. The field exercise had gone better than she had hoped, and the lunch with the team members had provided insights into the culture she was trying to navigate. Her phone rang as she parked at the headquarters building. The caller ID showed her mentor from the Naval War College, Captain Williams. "Sarah, how's the new assignment going?" "Better than expected, actually. Today was my first field exercise, and I think I held my own." "Glad to hear it. Remember, you're not just representing yourself in this assignment. You're proving that the integration concept can work, but don't let that pressure overwhelm you." "I won't, though it's definitely challenging." "The best assignments usually are. Keep me updated on how things progress." As Sarah ended the call and headed into the building for the afternoon session, she felt a growing confidence. The morning had proven that she could handle the technical aspects of the coordination role, but more importantly, it had shown her that acceptance by the team was possible. The afternoon brought more briefings and planning sessions, but the atmosphere felt different. Comments were more direct, questions more technical, and the overall interaction more professional in the best sense of the word. Sarah was being treated as a contributing team member rather than an observer. As the workday ended, she realized that the real test was not over, it was just beginning. Today had been about proving basic competence. Tomorrow and the days that followed would be about building the trust and respect that and had talked about. Walking to her car as the sun set over San, Sarah felt a quiet satisfaction. The first real hurdle had been cleared, but she knew that in the world of naval special warfare, earning your place was an ongoing process, not a single achievement. The challenges ahead would be greater, but today had shown her that she was capable of meeting them. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah's first field exercise, and the routine of SEAL Team 7 had become familiar territory. Her temporary office was now filled with operational charts, communication protocols, and the accumulated paperwork that came with coordinating between naval special warfare and surface fleet operations. More importantly, her presence at planning meetings was no longer met with curious glances or skeptical questions. The morning briefing on Tuesday, March 15th, carried an unusual tension. Commander Martinez had called an all-hands meeting for 700, earlier than normal, and his expression suggested this was more than routine business. "Ladies and," Martinez began as the team assembled in the main conference room, "we've received notification of a real-world deployment opportunity. This is not an exercise." The room fell silent. Sarah felt the familiar shift in energy that accompanied the transition from training to operational reality. Intelligence sources indicate a potential terrorist cell operating in the Mediterranean. NATO has requested U.S. support for a joint operation targeting a suspected weapons smuggling network. SEAL Team 7 has been tasked with maritime interdiction operations in coordination with Allied forces. Lieutenant Commander Brooks activated the large wall display, showing a map of the eastern Mediterranean. Red symbols marked suspected operational areas, while blue icons indicated friendly force positions. "Deployment timeline is aggressive," Martinez continued. "We ship out in 72 hours aboard the USS Hampton. This will be a 6-week deployment with potential for extension based on operational requirements." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. A real deployment meant everything she had been training for would now be tested under actual operational conditions. It also meant her integration experiment would face its ultimate validation. "Lieutenant," Martinez said, turning toward her, "your liaison role becomes critical in this deployment. The operation requires close coordination with multiple surface vessels from different NATO countries. Communication and cultural barriers could significantly impact mission success." "Understood, sir. I'm ready." Sitting 2 seats down from Sarah, spoke up. "Sir, what's the threat assessment for the operational area?" "Medium to high. Intelligence suggests the smugglers are well armed and have connections to larger terrorist networks. We should expect armed resistance and possible explosive devices." The briefing continued for another hour, covering logistics, communication protocols, and preliminary operational planning. Sarah took detailed notes while absorbing the reality that her training period was over. In 3 days, she would be deploying with SEAL Team 7 on her first real-world special operations mission. After the formal briefing ended, the team members scattered to begin deployment preparations. Sarah was gathering her materials when Chief approached. "Lieutenant, got a minute?" "Of course, Chief." "Walk with me," led her out of the conference room toward the equipment storage areas. "Real deployment changes things. The guys are focused now in a way that's different from training. Everything matters more when people are actually shooting back." They stopped outside the armory, where several team members were conducting weapons inventory. Sarah could hear the methodical checking of serial numbers and equipment status. "I want to be sure you understand," continued, "that this deployment is going to test everyone. Not just your technical skills, but how you handle stress, make decisions under pressure, and work as part of the team when everything is on the line." "I appreciate the warning, Chief. Is there something specific I should be concerned about?" Was quiet for a moment, watching the activity in the armory. "The men have accepted you during training, but deployment is different. If something goes wrong, if someone gets hurt because of a communication failure or coordination problem, that acceptance could disappear pretty quickly." Sarah nodded. "I understand the stakes." "Good, because we're all counting on each other out there." The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Sarah found herself working 12-hour days reviewing communication protocols, studying the operational area, and coordinating with the surface fleet assets that would support the mission. Her apartment became a staging area for gear and equipment as she prepared for her first extended deployment. On Thursday evening, her sister called from Los Angeles. "I saw on the news that there's increased military activity in the Mediterranean. Are you involved in that?" "I can't discuss operational details, but I am deploying soon." "Be safe, Sarah. I worry about you in that world." "I know, but this is what I trained for. This is why I joined the Navy." After ending the call, Sarah continued packing her deployment bag. Each item had to be carefully considered, space was limited, and everything she brought would need to justify its weight and volume for 6 weeks at sea. Friday morning brought the final preparation briefing. The team gathered in full deployment configuration, their gear organized and ready for transport. Sarah wore the same tactical clothing and equipment as the SEAL team members, her surface warfare background having prepared her for shipboard operations, but not for the specialized gear required for special operations. "Final equipment check," announced Senior Chief Jackson. Each team member methodically reviewed their gear while partners critical items. Sarah found herself paired with Petty Officer for the check. "First deployment," asked as he the settings on her radio equipment. "First with special operations. I've deployed before on surface ships." "Different world out there. No routine watch schedules, no predictable meal times. Everything revolves around the operational tempo." Clipped a backup battery pack to her gear. "The good news is that you'll get to see how we really operate, not just training scenarios." "I'm looking forward to it." Paused in his equipment check. "You know, when you first showed up, I figured you'd be gone within a month. Most staff officers can't handle the operational pace." "What changed your mind?" "You have 3 weeks of showing up, doing the work, not complaining about the hours or the physical demands. That counts for something." The transport to the USS Hampton took place in the pre-dawn hours of Saturday morning. Sarah found herself aboard a bus with 8 SEAL team members, their gear secured in the storage compartments below. The conversation was subdued, each man focused on the transition from training mindset to operational readiness. The Hampton was an impressive vessel, one of the Navy's guided missile destroyers. As their bus approached the pier, Sarah could see the ship's sleek profile against the dawn sky. Crew members were visible on deck, conducting final preparations for departure. "Home sweet home for the next 6 weeks," commented Jackson, looking out the bus window. Boarding the ship brought back memories of Sarah's previous deployments, but with a significant difference. This time, she was part of a specialized team with a specific mission, not simply another department head managing routine naval operations. The SEAL team was assigned to dedicated spaces in the ship's forward section, with their own briefing room, equipment storage, and living quarters. Sarah found herself assigned to officers' country, sharing the wardroom with the ship's department heads. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant," said Commander Hayes, the Hampton's commanding officer, as Sarah reported for duty. "I've been briefed on your mission. We'll provide whatever support you need." "Thank you, Captain. I'm looking forward to working with your crew." The Special Operations community speaks very highly of coordination with surface fleet assets. I understand you're helping to bridge that gap. "That's the goal, ma'am." As the Hampton got that afternoon, Sarah stood on the bridge wing watching the California coast recede into the distance. The next time she saw land, she would have completed her first real Special Operations deployment. The first week at sea established the operational rhythm. Days began with intelligence briefings at 600, followed by planning sessions, equipment maintenance, and physical training. Sarah found herself fully integrated into the team's daily routine, participating in everything from tactical discussions to the communal meals that served as informal team-building sessions. Her role as liaison officer expanded beyond simple communication coordination. She became the bridge between the SEAL team's operational requirements and the ship's capabilities, translating between two military cultures that spoke the same language but often emphasized different priorities. "The surface fleet thinks in terms of scheduled operations and predictable timelines," she explained to Chief during one planning session. "Special operations requires flexibility and rapid response capability. My job is to help both sides understand what the other needs." Makes sense. We've had communication problems on previous deployments because neither side really understood how the other operates. The breakthrough moment came during the second week at sea. Intelligence had identified a suspicious vessel operating in international waters, and the SEAL team was tasked with conducting a maritime interdiction operation. This would be Sarah's first real-world coordination challenge. We need the Hampton to position itself for overwatch while maintaining the flexibility to move quickly if the situation changes, explained Lieutenant Commander Brooks during the planning session. Sarah studied the tactical display, considering both the SEAL team's requirements and the ship's operational capabilities. I recommend we establish a patrol pattern that keeps us within rapid response range while maintaining the appearance of routine transit. If the target vessel becomes suspicious, we can adjust without revealing our intentions. Sounds good. Can you coordinate with the bridge to establish that pattern? Already working on it, sir. The interdiction operation took place on a clear morning in the eastern Mediterranean. Sarah found herself in the ship's Combat Information Center, coordinating between the SEAL team conducting the operation and the Hampton's crew providing support. Multiple radio nets carried continuous traffic as helicopters, boarding teams, and surface vessels worked together to successfully intercept the target. Outstanding coordination, Commander Hayes told Sarah after the operation concluded successfully. That was some of the smoothest communication I've seen between special operations and surface fleet assets. Thank you, Captain. The SEAL team made it easier by understanding what information I needed to pass to your crew. That evening, the SEAL team gathered in their briefing room for the post-operation debrief. Sarah listened as team members discussed what had worked well and what could be improved, but she noticed that her role in the operation was mentioned several times as a contributing factor to the mission's success. Communication was solid throughout, reported. Never had to wait for coordination with the ship, and the surface picture was always clear. Chief nodded. Having someone who understands both sides of the equation makes a real difference. As the meeting concluded, Lieutenant Commander Brooks approached Sarah privately. I wanted to thank you for today. That was textbook coordination, and it made our job significantly easier. Thank you, sir. It felt good to see everything come together. It should. You've earned your place on this team. Walking back to her stateroom that night, Sarah reflected on Brooks's words. 3 months ago, she had been a surface warfare officer with no special operations experience. Tonight, she was a trusted member of a SEAL team who had just completed her first successful real-world operation. The deployment was far from over, and more challenging operations lay ahead. But tonight, Sarah felt the quiet satisfaction that came from knowing she had proven herself capable of meeting the standards of naval special warfare's most elite units. The Mediterranean stretched endlessly beyond the ship's hull, dark water reflecting the stars above. Somewhere in that darkness, other operations were being planned and conducted by teams similar to hers. Sarah was now part of that world, a contributor rather than an observer. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to demonstrate the value of integration between special operations and conventional naval forces. But tonight, she was simply a member of SEAL Team 7, steaming through international waters toward whatever mission awaited them next. The emergency briefing was called at 3:30 hours on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks into the deployment. Sarah was awakened by the urgent announcement over the ship's intercom system, the tone indicating this was no drill. She dressed quickly and made her way to the SEAL team's briefing room, where emergency lighting cast harsh shadows on the faces of the assembling team members. Commander Martinez was already present, his expression grim as he studied a message board filled with classified communications. The team filtered in within minutes, their movements efficient despite the early hour and sudden awakening. Lieutenant, Martinez began without preamble, we have a developing situation. A cruise ship, the Ocean Princess, has sent a distress call reporting engine failure approximately 40 nautical miles from our current position. Initial reports suggest mechanical problems, but intelligence sources indicate this may be connected to the terrorist network we've been tracking. The room was silent as the implications sank in. A cruise ship represented hundreds of potential hostages and a complex operational environment that would challenge every aspect of their training. Lieutenant Commander Brooks activated the tactical display. showing the cruise ship's reported position relative to their own location and other naval assets in the area. The Ocean Princess is a mid-size vessel carrying approximately 800 passengers and 300 crew members. She's registered in Panama, but operates primarily in Mediterranean cruise circuits. Sarah found herself taking rapid notes while calculating the logistics of responding to such a large-scale potential emergency. Her experience with surface fleet operations provided insight into the complexity of coordinating multiple vessels in close proximity. "What's our intelligence assessment?" asked Chief. "Uncertain at this point," Martinez replied. "The distress call came through normal maritime channels, but the timing and location are suspicious. We've been tracking increased chatter in terrorist communication networks over the past 48 hours, and the cruise ship's route would make it an attractive target." Senior Chief Jackson raised his hand. "What other assets are available for response?" "USS Stockton is approximately 6 hours away, and Italian naval forces have units en route. However, we're the closest military asset with special operations capability. If this is a terrorist incident, we may be the primary response force." Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling over the room. Everything they had trained for could potentially be required within the next few hours, but with the added complexity of nearly 1,100 civilians at risk. "Lieutenant," Martinez said, turning toward her, "your coordination role becomes critical if we conduct operations involving a vessel of this size. Communication with multiple agencies, passenger management, and surface fleet coordination will be essential." "Understood, sir. I'll begin coordinating with the Hamptons Communications Center to establish contact with all relevant authorities." "Good. Brooks, I want operational planning to begin immediately. Prepare scenarios for both humanitarian assistance and hostage rescue operations. We need to be ready for anything." The next 4 hours were a blur of activity. Sarah found herself at the center of a complex coordination effort, establishing communication links with Coast Guard rescue coordination centers, NATO maritime headquarters, and various other agencies that might be involved in the response. In the SEAL team's planning spaces, tactical preparations proceeded with methodical precision. Equipment was checked, communication frequencies, and multiple operational scenarios developed depending on what they might find aboard the Ocean Princess. "Any word from the cruise ship since the initial distress call?" asked as his equipment. "Negative," Sarah replied, monitoring multiple radio circuits simultaneously. "They've gone silent, which could mean communication equipment failure or something more serious." Not a good sign either way. By 800 hours, the USS Hampton had closed to within visual range of the Ocean Princess. Sarah joined the SEAL team on the bridge wing for their first look at the potential operational area. The cruise ship was impressive even from a distance, her white hull gleaming in the morning sun. At first glance, everything appeared normal. Passengers were visible on the upper decks, and the ship seemed to be maintaining normal operations despite the reported engine problems. "Looks peaceful enough," observed Chief, studying the vessel through binoculars. "Maybe too peaceful," replied Lieutenant Commander Brooks. "For a ship with reported engine failure, she seems remarkably stable and well-positioned." Sarah was monitoring the communication circuits when an urgent transmission caught her attention. "Sir, I'm receiving a communication on maritime emergency frequency. It's from someone aboard the Ocean Princess, and they are not using standard distress protocols." The team gathered around Sarah's communication equipment as she adjusted the radio settings to improve reception. The voice that came through was strained and speaking in careful, measured tones. "Any vessel responding to Ocean Princess emergency, please be advised that our situation has changed. We are no longer experiencing mechanical difficulties, but we do require immediate assistance from qualified maritime security personnel." Brooks and exchanged glances. "That's not standard cruise ship terminology," Brooks said quietly. Sarah keyed her microphone. "Station calling regarding Ocean Princess. This is U.S. naval vessel. Please identify yourself and clarify your status." There was a long pause before the response came. "U.S. naval vessel, this is the Ocean Princess Security Office. We have a security situation aboard that requires immediate special operations response. Please stand by for authentication code." Sarah looked at Lieutenant Commander Brooks, who nodded for her to continue. Ocean Princess, standing by for authentication. What came next changed everything. The voice from the cruise ship began transmitting a series of numbers and letters that Sarah recognized as a classified authentication code used by U.S. intelligence agencies. Someone aboard the Ocean Princess was identifying themselves as a federal agent. "Sir," Sarah said quietly, "that's a valid DEA authentication code. Whoever is transmitting has legitimate federal law enforcement credentials." The implications were staggering. If a federal agent aboard the cruise ship was requesting special operations support, it meant the situation was far more complex than a simple engine failure or even a typical terrorist incident. Commander Martinez, who had joined them on the bridge, made the decision quickly. "We're going in. Brooks, prepare for immediate deployment. Establish secure communication with whoever is transmitting from that ship." The next hour was a carefully orchestrated dance of preparation. The SEAL teamed their equipment for what could be anything from a hostage rescue to a counter-narcotics operation, while Sarah worked to establish reliable communication with the federal agent aboard the Ocean Princess. The agent, who identified himself as Special Agent David Martinez of the Drug Enforcement Administration, provided a briefing that exceeded their worst-case scenarios. The Ocean Princess had been infiltrated by a major drug trafficking organization that was using the cruise ship as a mobile distribution platform. However, the operation had been compromised when the traffickers discovered Agent Martinez's identity. The situation deteriorated rapidly, Agent Martinez explained over the secure communication link. The traffickers have taken control of key areas of the ship, including the engine room and communications center. They're holding approximately 30 crew members as hostages while allowing normal passenger activities to continue as cover. Sarah relayed the information to the SEAL team as they conducted final preparations for deployment. The complexity of the situation was unlike anything they had trained for: a floating environment with hundreds of innocent civilians, armed criminals with hostages, and a federal agent operating undercover in the middle of it all. "This is going to require surgical precision," observed Chief as he reviewed the ship's deck plans. "We can't use standard assault tactics with that many civilians present." Lieutenant Commander Brooks nodded. "We'll need to coordinate with the federal agent to identify the exact location of the hostiles and hostages before we make any moves." Sarah found herself serving as the primary communication link between the SEAL team and Agent Martinez. Her surface fleet background proved invaluable as she helped translate the cruise ship's layout and systems for the Special Operations team. "Agent Martinez, this is the Naval Coordination Team. Can you provide an exact count and location of the hostile forces?" "Coordination Team, I count 8 armed individuals. 4 are in the engine room with hostages, 2 are in the communications center, and 2 are roving the crew areas. They're armed with automatic weapons and have made it clear they're willing to use them." The tactical challenge was immense. The SEAL team would need to simultaneously neutralize 8 armed criminals in different locations throughout a massive ship while ensuring the safety of both hostages and innocent passengers. "We need a coordinated assault," Brooks explained to the team. "Multiple entry points, synchronized timing, and constant communication to ensure we don't have friendly fire incidents or endanger civilians." Sarah realized that her role had evolved far beyond simple coordination. She was now the critical communication link that would enable the entire operation to succeed or fail based on her ability to keep all elements informed and coordinated. As the USS Hampton maneuvered into position for the operation, Sarah felt the familiar pre-mission tension that she remembered from her surface warfare deployments. But this was different, more personal, more immediate, and with stakes that extended far beyond military objectives. The next few hours would determine not only the fate of nearly 1,100 people aboard the Ocean Princess, but also the success of everything the SEAL team had trained for during their deployment. "Final equipment check," announced Senior Chief Jackson. Each team member their gear one last time while Sarah established the communication networks that would coordinate the most complex operation any of them had ever attempted. As the sun reached its zenith over the Mediterranean, 2 vessels floated side by side, one a sophisticated naval warship, the other a pleasure craft hiding a deadly secret. Between them, a small group of highly trained professionals prepared to risk everything to save the lives of people they had never met. Sarah checked her communication equipment one final time, knowing that in the next few hours, every word she transmitted could mean the difference between success and catastrophe. The training was over. The real test was about to begin. The Mediterranean wind carried the sounds of normal cruise ship activities across the water. Laughter, music, and the general buzz of people enjoying their vacation, unaware that their safety now depended on a coordinated special operations assault that would push every participant to the limits of their training and experience. "All stations, this is Team Leader," Brooks announced over the communication network. "Final briefing in 10 minutes. This is what we trained for." The final briefing took place in the USS Hampton's Combat Information Center at 1200 hours. Charts of the Ocean Princess covered every available surface, while tactical displays showed the complex coordination required for the operation. Sarah stood at the communication console, surrounded by radio equipment that would link together the most challenging rescue operation any of them had ever attempted. Lieutenant Commander Brooks addressed the assembled team with the calm confidence that had carried them through months of training. "This operation will require everything we've learned about precision, timing, and teamwork. We have 8 hostile targets, 30 hostages, and over 800 innocent passengers who cannot know what's happening around them." The plan was elegantly complex. 3 two-man teams would simultaneously assault different areas of the cruise ship while Sarah coordinated from the Hampton, maintaining communication with Agent Martinez and directing surface fleet support. The timing had to be perfect. Any delay or communication failure could result in hostage casualties. "Agent Martinez has confirmed that the hostiles are monitoring cruise ship communication frequencies," Brooks continued. "All tactical communication will be conducted on encrypted military channels, with lieutenants serving as our coordination hub." Chief reviewed the assault timeline one final time. "Alpha Team takes the engine room, Bravo Team secures the communications center, Charlie Team handles the roving guards. Simultaneous execution at 1300 hours, with extraction completed by 1330. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling over her. 6 highly trained operators would be depending on her coordination to ensure they could move through the ship without interfering with each other while maintaining contact with Agent Martinez. "Communication protocols," Sarah announced, testing each radio frequency. "Alpha Team on Channel 2, Bravo on Channel 4, Charlie on Channel 6. I'll maintain contact with Agent Martinez on the secure federal frequency while coordinating with Hampton's Bridge on Channel 8. Now geared up for the engine room assault, approached Sarah at the communication station. "Ma'am, I want to say something before we launch." "What is it?" "When you first showed up 3 months ago, I didn't think you belonged here. I was wrong. Today, I'd rather have you coordinating this operation than anyone else in the Navy." Sarah was surprised by the statement. "Thank you, that means a lot. Just keep us talking to each other out there." At 12:45 hours, the 3 assault teams departed the Hampton aboard rigid inflatable boats, their approach masked by the normal maritime traffic in the area. Sarah watched through binoculars as the small boats disappeared into the ocean swells, carrying 6 of the most capable operators she had ever worked with toward a target that would test every skill they possessed. "Agent Martinez, this is Navy coordination," Sarah transmitted on the secure frequency. "Our teams are en route. Can you confirm hostile positions?" "Coordination, Agent Martinez. Hostiles remain in previously reported locations. Engine room team is holding 4 crew members near the main generators. Communications team has barricaded themselves in the radio room. Roving guards are currently on Deck 7 near the crew quarters." Sarah relayed the information to the assault teams while tracking their approach on radar. Everything depended on reaching their targets simultaneously without alerting the criminals to the coordinated nature of the assault. "Alpha Team coordination. You are approaching target vessel. Confirm your status." "Coordination, Alpha Team Leader. We have visual on target, preparing for climb." The next 15 minutes were the longest of Sarah's career. She listened to the careful coordination as 3 teams of SEALs scaled the massive cruise ship from different directions, moving through areas of the vessel that continued normal operations while passengers enjoyed their vacation activities just feet away. Bravo team, coordination. Agent Martinez reports communications room hostiles are becoming agitated. You may have a limited window. Coordination, Bravo team leader. We're in position, ready for coordinated assault. Sarah checked her timeline. All three teams had reached their assault positions with 2 minutes to spare. Agent Martinez reported that hostile positions remained unchanged. Everything was ready for the most complex simultaneous operation any of them had ever attempted. All teams, coordination. Stand by for coordinated assault. Execute in 3, 2, 1, execute. What followed was 90 seconds of controlled chaos. Sarah's communication station exploded with traffic as 3 separate firefights erupted simultaneously throughout the cruise ship. Her job was to track the progress of each team while ensuring they maintained coordination and didn't accidentally engage each other. Alpha Team Leader, coordination. Engine room secured, 4 hostages safe, 2 hostiles down. Bravo Team Leader, coordination. Communications center secured, no hostages present, 2 hostiles surrendering. Charlie Team, coordination. We have 1 hostile down, still searching for the second roving guard. The partially successful reports were encouraging, but Sarah knew the operation wasn't complete until all hostiles were neutralized and every hostage was confirmed safe. Agent Martinez, coordination. Can you assist Charlie Team in locating the remaining hostile? Coordination, Agent Martinez. I have visual on the remaining target. He's moving toward the passenger areas on Deck 5. This could get very dangerous if he reaches the civilians. Sarah felt her pulse spike. A hostile moving toward passenger areas represented the nightmare scenario that everyone had hoped to avoid. Charlie Team, coordination. Hostile is moving toward Deck 5 passenger areas. Agent Martinez has visual and is attempting to intercept. Coordination, Charlie Team. We're moving to intercept. Can Agent Martinez maintain visual contact? The next few minutes tested every aspect of Sarah's coordination training. She found herself directing 3 separate elements. Charlie Team moving through the ship's service corridors, Agent Martinez tracking the hostile through passenger areas, and the Hampton's crew preparing to provide additional support if needed. Coordination, Agent Martinez. Hostile has entered the main dining area. Approximately 60 passengers present. I'm moving to intercept, but I need Charlie Team to block the aft exit. Charlie Team, coordination. Agent Martinez needs you to block the aft exit from the main dining area. Hostile is among civilians. Sarah realized that the success of the entire operation now depended on preventing one armed criminal from taking hostages among innocent cruise passengers. Everything they had trained for culminated in this moment. Coordination, Charlie Team Leader. We have the aft exit secured. Agent Martinez, you are clear to move. Agent Martinez copies, moving to intercept. The silence that followed was agonizing. Sarah monitored multiple frequencies while watching radar contacts that showed various vessels in the area. The entire operation balanced on the edge of success or potential disaster. Coordination, Agent Martinez. Hostile is down, no civilian casualties, all clear in the dining area. Sarah felt relief flood through her as she transmitted the news to all elements. All teams, coordination. Final hostile is down. All hostages secure, no civilian casualties reported. The post-assault coordination took another hour as local authorities were. Evidence was secured, and the cruise ship's normal operations were restored. Sarah coordinated with Italian Coast Guard units that arrived to take custody of the surviving criminals while ensuring that the cruise passengers remained unaware of how close they had come to disaster. Outstanding coordination, Commander Martinez told her as the SEAL teams returned to the Hampton. That operation required split-second timing and flawless communication. You made it possible. Thank you, sir. The team made my job easier by staying focused under pressure. As the USS Hampton departed the area that evening, Sarah found herself on the bridge wing watching the Ocean Princess continue its cruise route. Passengers were visible on the upper decks, enjoying the Mediterranean sunset, unaware that their vacation had briefly become the center of an international counterterrorism operation. Chief joined her at the railing. Hell of a deployment for your first time with special operations. Not exactly what I expected when I reported to SEAL Team 7 3 months ago. Nothing ever is. but you proved yourself out there today. That was professional-level coordination under the worst possible circumstances. Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 3 months ago, she had been a surface warfare officer hopping to prove that integration between conventional naval forces and special operations could work. Today, she was a trusted member of a SEAL team who had just completed one of the most complex operations in recent memory. "You know," continued, "told me something interesting after we got back aboard." "What's that?" "He said he'd rather have you coordinating operations than any staff officer he's ever worked with. Coming from, that's about the highest praise you'll ever get." The cruise ship disappeared into the distance as the Hampton set course for their next assignment. Sarah's deployment with SEAL Team 7 was far from over, but today had proven that the integration experiment was more than successful. It was transformational for everyone involved. Her phone buzzed with a message from Captain Williams, her mentor from the Naval War College. "Saw the operational reports. Outstanding work. You're proving that excellence transcends traditional boundaries." Sarah smiled as she typed back, "Just doing the job I was trained for." But as she looked out over the Mediterranean, Sarah knew that today had been about more than just doing her job. It had been about proving that capability and dedication mattered more than preconceptions, that trust was earned through action rather than granted through assumption, and that the most elite military units could become even stronger when they embraced the skills and perspectives of qualified personnel, regardless of their background. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors as the USS Hampton steamed toward whatever challenges awaited them next. Sarah, surface warfare officer turned SEAL team coordinator, had found her place in a world that had initially seemed closed to her. More importantly, she had proven that the world of naval special warfare was stronger for having her in it. 3 months ago, Petty Officer had questioned whether a surface warfare officer could understand what SEALs do. Today, there was no question at all. Sarah had not only understood, she had become an integral part of it, earning her place through competence, dedication, and the kind of performance under pressure that defined the best of naval special warfare. As the stars appeared over the Mediterranean, Sarah stood watch with her teammates, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities to serve alongside some of the most capable warriors in the world. The integration experiment had succeeded beyond everyone's expectations, proving that excellence recognizes no boundaries when it encounters true professional competence. The secret code that had identified Agent Martinez during the crisis was just numbers and letters transmitted over a radio. But the real secret, the one that and the others had learned, was that capability and character mattered more than preconceptions, and that the most elite teams could become even stronger when they recognized and embraced talent wherever they found it. In the distance, other vessels moved through the ancient waters of the Mediterranean, carrying their own crews toward their own destinies. Aboard the USS Hampton, SEAL Team 7 continued its deployment, stronger and more capable than ever, with a coordination capability that had proven itself under the most challenging circumstances imaginable. Sarah had earned her place among them, not through special consideration or lowered standards, but through the same qualities that had always defined the best of America's military: competence, courage, and an unwavering commitment to the mission and the team.